The all-new Inside Sources. Your inside access to the people and policies shaping Utah's future. Here are Greg Skordas and Holly Richardson on KSL NewsRadio.
Yesterday, when we introduced the show, we talked about a number of events that had happened in our country over the weekend, including a double homicide in Minnesota. If you recall, a Minnesota lawmaker and her husband were shot and killed in their home late night, Saturday night, I believe, and then another Minnesota lawmaker and his wife were shot and wounded shortly before that. A man named Vance Bolter has now been taken into custody. He had a court hearing yesterday morning in state court, but it was interrupted because the federal FBI jumped in and said that they were going to take it as federal charges. To get more about information about this, we're joined this morning by Cami Mondeaux, Deseret News congressional correspondent. Cami, welcome.
Thank you.
And so we're going to shift a little bit because in response to this, our own Utah Senator Mike Lee has faced some backlash for some comments he made on Twitter. I guess it's called X now.
Yeah, X.
And can you tell us the context of what he did and what the source of the consternation is?
Yeah, absolutely. So really a lot of the backlash stems from a pair of tweets or posts on X, like you said, that he made over the weekend that basically just showed a photo of the alleged shooter in his mask. And Mike Lee basically, posted with some captions basically asserting that this shooting was motivated by leftist politics. He called the shooter a Marxist, basically saying that was the reason for these murders, without any evidence, without any knowledge of what the shooter's motivation might have been. And so that kind of sparked some backlash, especially from the senators from Minnesota who kind of said, please don't use, these murders, these tragic times to kind of poke fun at a very serious issue.
Yeah, can you give us just an idea of what, for example, Senator Tina Smith said to him?
Yeah, absolutely. So yesterday, while we were waiting for senators to come to the Senate in the evening, Tina Smith basically wasn't commenting to anyone in the hallways, saying that she was looking for Mike Lee. After she had a conversation, she basically said that she approached him, told him that what he did was not okay, it was not funny. She kind of said that he seemed surprised, actually, to be confronted, that he wasn't expecting it, that he didn't necessarily apologize or really have a reason for why he posted, but she was very clearly upset about the whole situation.
And has he or his staff done anything about the posts? Do they still exist? Can somebody find them, or were they taken down?
Right, I actually did check this morning. Both of the posts are still up on his account. They haven't been deleted. There hasn't been any public statement from his team. I've reached out multiple times to get comment. A few of us even went up to Mike Lee yesterday in the hallways. He declined to comment. So it seems like they're a little bit quiet on this front. Lee's Twitter account itself has been posting other things since then, so it doesn't appear that he's taken a break from social media at all, but it kind of just seems like the issue is being, kind of pushed to the side.
So just to be clear, we've got a post that happened. I guess the first one is his post that said, "This is what happens when Marxists don't get their way," and it had a couple of pictures of the shooter, one of them wearing the really creepy latex mask, and then the other one was Nightmare on Walt Street, and it contained two pictures of the two state legislators who were shot. One of them was killed. So yeah, Cami, can you also tell us maybe what the deputy chief of staff for Tina Smith said? I thought that email was very pointed but also poignant.
Yes, absolutely. So they did send a very wordy email, basically, not only to Mike Lee, but also to his staff, kind of berating them for saying, is this what you're proud of? Are you happy about what you did? You kind of took a situation and politicized it. It was a lengthy email. It doesn't appear that, Mike Lee's staff has answered. I've reached out multiple times for comment and haven't gotten anything. And so it kind of just seems like silence from the Mike Lee side, but clearly a lot of the Minnesota lawmakers and other Democrats even are pretty upset.
And I was going to ask you about that, Cami. Did you reach out to Lee and his staff, and you haven't received any comment back, or you've received a sort of a no comment, or tell us what you've heard from them so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So far I haven't received any comment from his staff when I've reached out, over email or text message. When we did see Mike Lee in person, that's when we kind of got a no comment from him himself, but that is the extent of anything.
Well, thank you for joining us, Cami, from D.C. I know you're really busy back there. We appreciate your time.
This is a difficult one, and I can understand both sides of this. I mean, Mike Lee probably didn't post something knowing that it was going to be rise to this level of offensiveness. Nightmare on Waltz Street. So a reference to the governor,
right?
Walls, but spells it waltz like
right.
the dance, which I don't know, tongue in cheek, kind of bad taste, I guess. And then this is what happens when Marxists don't get their way. I just I don't know. I mean, he could post what he wants. It's his X account.
But here's the thing, right? So this is a problem that we see, I think, across the board. This is particularly notable, I guess, because it's coming from a sitting U.S. senator. He took a position, or at least the people posting to his Twitter account took a position that they knew the politics of the shooter, right? And as more information has come out, they were incorrect. This was somebody who considered himself conservative Republican. He voted for President Trump, said his friends and family. He was very pro-life and even a minister. So it's fundamentally untrue, right? So what we haven't seen is an apology or any kind of backtracking saying, I spoke too soon. I should have waited to find out more information, or I apologize for jumping to conclusions. There hasn't been any of that. And in fact, we have a Minnesota Republican who's a state representative, who said, Lee isn't immune from social media impulses. That is one of the drawbacks of social media, right? You can just post instantly. But he said he should apologize and then do better.
Yeah, and we did have one reporter that walked to him and said, hey, what can you say about this? And this is all we heard.
Do you stand by the post that you made on X?
He said, do you stand by the post you made on X? No comment
It's
at all.
crickets, right?
Yeah. And then in an MSNBC interview, Senator Amy Klobuchar said that she condemns Mike Lee for his behavior and she intends to speak with him about the posts.
This isn't funny what happened here. This was an incredible woman, her husband, her two kids yesterday on Father's Day. There was no Father's Day for them. They lost both their parents.
And you can hear the emotion in
Yeah.
her voice as she describes that.
Yeah, for sure. And, we mentioned Senator Tina Smith. There's some posts on X where you can see she's literally waiting in the hall. She calls him out. In fact, there's one I saw that said she found him, and it's a picture of her speaking to him in the hallway outside some of the Senate chambers.
Interesting that there hasn't been more of a response from the Lee camp in terms of not necessarily an apology. I mean, if that's what he felt like saying at the time, that's one thing. Maybe an explanation. He did make a post later condemning the action and said this has no place in.
Let's be clear, that was his official account, and this one is his based Mike Lee account, which is the one where he tweets the most often. It's very, very frequent that he's posting on this based Mike Lee account.
Yeah, and
so from his official one, he says this is terrible and we condemn acts of violence.
Apparently, he posts quite often on it.
He does.
Didn't you say that there's been
it feels like hundreds of times a day. It's maybe not quite that much, but he's very, very active on X.
I wonder if this is another one, Holly, where Republicans line up on one side and Democrats line up on the other, and one side saying, hey, this is just talk, let's not make a big deal out of it, and some people saying this is really offensive and maybe we should make a big deal out of it.
So we actually have some developing news we are happy to share with you. In fact, I don't see any other source sharing it, so we'll be the first to bring it to you. Mike Lee has been under fire for a couple of social media posts he made over the weekend, specifically related to the Minnesota shootings. And those posts were there this morning with tens of thousands of comments, and they are gone. They've been deleted.
Yeah, so let's talk about those posts, and that's interesting and probably sensible. I mean, it makes sense on a lot of levels. What happened was this, and we talked about this yesterday. There was a series of shootings in Minnesota over the weekend involving two of their state lawmakers. A senator and his wife were shot and injured. A representative, really one of the more powerful representatives, was shot and killed with her husband. And the individual involved in that was charged both federally and statewide. Yesterday, he appeared in court. Mike Lee posted some comments about this on his
His personal account, based Mike Lee account.
And one of them said, "This is what happens when Marxists don't get their way." And another one had a picture of the victims, I believe, and with a post that said "Nightmare on Waltz Street," in reference to the Minnesota governor.
Yeah, earlier we had a reporter who approached him and asked him about these posts.
Do you stand by the post that you made on X?
And he walked away. He didn't say a word about it, and that sort of continued for quite some time. Cami Mondeaux, Deseret News congressional correspondent, joined us earlier, and she spoke about the confrontation Mike Lee experienced with a senator, Tina Smith.
So yesterday, while we were waiting for senators to come to the Senate in the evening, Tina Smith basically wasn't commenting to anyone in the hallways, saying that she was looking for Mike Lee. After she had a conversation, she basically said that she approached him, told him that what he did was not okay, it was not funny. She kind of said that he seemed surprised, actually, to be confronted, that he wasn't expecting it, but he didn't necessarily apologize or really have a reason for why he posted, but she was very clearly upset about the whole situation.
So Senator Tina Smith is from Minnesota, and she had some very strong feelings about this. So as far as I have seen so far, Senator Lee has not made a statement about taking down those tweets. He has not made an apology. He has not talked to media, but he has gotten, like we said, a lot of backlash nationally from including other representatives and other senators. So the other senator from Minnesota is Amy Klobuchar, and she condemns Mike Lee for his behavior and says she intends to speak with him about his posts once she gets back to D.C.
This isn't funny what happened here. This was an incredible woman, her husband, her 2 kids yesterday on Father's Day. There was no Father's Day for them. They lost both their parents.
Yeah, and as we said at the top of this segment, Mike Lee has now removed those posts from his social media account. They don't exist anymore. I don't know how you found out about it.
I looked on X. They're not there anymore.
Okay, because that would have happened within the last little while.
The last couple of hours, yeah. They were there this morning when we started our show at 9 o'clock. They are not there now, so he still has other posts. He's continuing to post on his Based Mike Lee personal account. He did have one tweet over the weekend. This was on Sunday, June 15th, from his official Senator Mike Lee account, where he said, "These hateful attacks, and in plural, have no place in Utah, Minnesota, or anywhere in America. Please join me in condemning this senseless violence and praying for the victims and their families," which seems to be an appropriate response.
Absolutely, right. And maybe the removal of the, I won't call them inappropriate, but questionable responses, it makes a lot of sense too. Not necessarily far. Maybe a step toward an apology. Maybe it doesn't warrant an apology. I'm not trying to opine one way or the other, but the backlash that he received and the comments that he received, mostly from Democrats, was of such a nature that maybe it wasn't worth taking up the fight anymore. And he probably felt. And I know Mike Lee. He's a professional. He's a lawyer. He's been around. He does a lot for Utah. Maybe he thought it just wasn't worth continuing this battle.
Look, sometimes, in fact, we know this happens a lot. Senators are really busy. They have staff that post things. We don't know for sure if this was actually Senator Lee or his staff. He definitely had been asked about it multiple times. In fact, the confrontation, or at least the walking away where he would not answer the question from a reporter, it was also videotaped, and he had staff members trying to hold up a binder in front of the camera so that they couldn't even take a picture of Senator Lee. But yeah, I mean, at some point you start to get so much backlash. He's having Republicans say he needs to resign. I haven't seen necessarily Republican legislators, but for example, Michael Steele, who used to be the head of the RNC, he said basically grow the heck up. There just have been a number of people saying you just need to step down. This is not only rises past the level of censure to some people and saying you just need to resign. This is absolutely unacceptable.
And I've practiced law for a number of years, and you see situations where people in court accused of a crime or something like that, and I just the notion of covering your face when the media is there, especially, I mean, he's a senator. Everybody knows who he is. Everybody knows who's walking down the hall. And maybe it was his staff that was doing that and thinking that they were helping him. That's not a look that's good. That's not a look that you want to have from U.S. senator.
Right. I mean, sometimes you have to acknowledge that you were wrong. So initial reports about the shooter were that he was affiliated with the Democratic Party. We now know that that's not true. But sometimes we, on social media especially, we act in haste. And sometimes we need to take a step back and either think about what we post beforehand, or we can say, look, I misjudged this. I apologize and try to do better. And a Minnesota Republican representative actually said that. So he's not a Democrat, right? He's saying, look, you need to apologize and do better.
And we don't know all of the motivations for this killer. We do know that he had some 70 names on his, I won't call it a manifesto, but he had a list of people that he was apparently targeting. Almost all of those were Democrats. It seems that as though he was very concerned about abortion as an issue that was, he called it murder. And these may have been politicians who voted and supported ideas that were contrary to his thoughts, and he felt that he needed to do something. He even told other individuals that this was the end. He was almost given the impression that he was going to go out with a bang.
He texted his family and said, "Daddy started a war," right? And he texted his wife separately and said, "Some stuff's going to go down, and I don't want you anywhere around our home when this happens." And so her car, she ended up being pulled over. Her car, they found $10,000 worth of cash and passports in her vehicle. So we know that he knew some stuff was going down, right? The alleged perpetrator of these crimes, but again, the response to call him out and say, well, this is what happens when we have Marxists, right? Or trying to mock the governor about this. I think it's really been problematic for Senator Lee.
Yeah, and when we talked about the indictment earlier, we talked about the parallels between this one and the Luigi Mangione. And I'm wondering if this individual felt, the Minnesota killer, that he would be held as a martyr a little bit, or that he would be applauded. I mean, it seems like,
I don't know,
it seems
right?
like
I guess I don't know motivations for people who justify killing by saying I'm pro-life, therefore I will murder people. I don't understand those motivations.
Yeah, I don't either, and I don't think that he is going to get the kind of, I don't know, I won't call it love, but the
notoriety.
Kind of attention, notoriety that Mangione got.